Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Today on the AllMomDoes podcast, we are going to have so much fun because I have a return guest who is an absolute bolt of comedic sunshine in your life. You're not going to want to miss this one. I'm Julie Lyles Carr. Again, this is the AllMomDoes podcast, part of the Purposely Podcast Network. And today I am welcoming Jess Johnston. Jess, thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I'm so excited to do this.
Well, we've gotten to have you on before. I'm sure that so many of my listeners remember you and all of the amazing things that you've done, including a book and this beautiful community that you've developed and all kinds of things. Give the listener a snapshot of where you are, what you do, where you live, the 4 kids, all the things.
The 4 kids. Oh man, that's the thing that takes over most of my life, I would say. I live in Southern California with my husband, all of our animals, our 4 kids. We've got ages. I've got boys who are 17 and 15 right now, and girls that are 13 and 11. So there is a lot of driving and cooking, and mostly the thing that really is taking over my life right now is their socks. Their socks are everywhere, in the couch cushions, underneath the side table. They're just everywhere. So that's what I mostly do, is pick up socks and drive people places. But I'm also the co-author of 2 books. I'll be there, but I'll be wearing sweatpants and here for it, the good, the bad, and the queso. And I run an online community called Sister, I Am With You on Facebook and Instagram, as well as my own page, which is Jess Johnston. And I just wrote a new book.
Yes,
which I'm very excited about.
Yeah. How was that process, since you had been part of a co-author team on the first 2 books? How was it doing it on your own?
Oh my gosh, it was nerve-wracking. I would definitely call Amy and be like, I need a pep talk. I don't know how to do this by myself. I'm very, very grateful that my first 2 book experiences were with Amy, who is incredible and amazing, and that I got to do it in a partnership rather than on my own at the beginning. But it also, I feel like in this book, I was able to dig deeper and really open up about more things in my personal life because it was all me. So
yeah, all from your perspective. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I have to give the listener the title of this newest book because I think it is just so fun. And when this came into my inbox, I was like, A, absolutely, I would love to have Jess back on. And B, the title alone. The title is Perfect is Boring. Perfect is Boring. And It Tastes Like Kale. And that is literally part of the title, which is so fun. So I want to hear from you how you landed on the topic of perfectionism, because Jess, I have to tell you, it is a dragon in my world. I have tried to slay many a time. I seem to have 2 settings. I seem to have come with 2 factory settings. One is that, no, everything has to be perfect. And the other one is I throw my hands up, I completely give up. It's just all chaos. Those are the 2 factory settings I came with. So tell me about how perfectionism popped up for you as an important topic to discuss and what your natural factory settings are when it comes to perfectionism.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can totally relate to what you're saying. 100%. 100%. I heard it once called, well, I don't want to put this on you. I'll just accept it for myself. I heard it once called lazy perfectionism, where
Okay.
it's like either all or nothing at all,
Yeah.
And then I think carrying a lot of guilt in the time where it's nothing at all, because I'm like, should be, could be, and it's so overwhelming, it's crushing. The perfectionism thing has really been a thing in my life from the beginning, I would say. I don't know if it's being a firstborn child or what it is exactly, but I was always really bad at it. Being perfect, I was never naturally, well, no one is, but I was always really bad at it. So then I carried a lot of guilt and shame for not operating on the level that I always thought I should be. And I really relate to what you're saying. It's the dragon that I continue to slay. Like, I can look back in my life at many times I had a come to Jesus moment where I was like, okay, I need to let my masks fall off, let my guard down, and just be real about where I'm at and the power that came with that. But then again, and then a year later, and then a year later, like, oh, it's in my life again. I need to reset.
Right, right. It's chased me for a long time in a couple of different ways. I'm also an oldest child and I'm the only girl. So I've got that whole
Yeah,
big
same.
sister,
Hmm.
thing going on. Oh,
Big
yeah.
sister energy.
Exactly. Big sister
Mm.
energy. Got that. I think I come from a long line of perfectionists and I can track that. And, the interesting part is some of those family lines, there was a level of perfectionism that actually got pulled off. I mean, like sometimes the house really truly was always
Right.
perfect, like with my grandmother and things like that. And something that if somebody's been a listener for a while, they've probably heard me say before, but I think it merits saying again. I got to tell you, just in our mothering careers, our co-mothering careers here, you were getting started right as I was wrapping up. So my youngest children are 17, the age of your oldest child.
Okay.
So when I started mothering, at that time, internet wasn't really like a thing. And so I would get in the mail once a month, House Beautiful or Southern Living or something like that. I would scour those pages, Jess. I mean, scour them for what I thought my little house was supposed to look like on we're trying to build a business budget, all of that,
Yeah.
and these palatial layouts of all of these different things. And I think about today, if I was beginning my mothering at the time in which I had my youngest, my twins, at the point at which you have your oldest, your 17-year-old, the messaging that messaging that is not saying perfectionism, but
No,
the
right.
access to seeing all the Pinterest boards and
Oh,
Instagram and all the things, it is so much more heightened than when I started as a mom. I don't even know what I would have done at least by the time I had my twins, there was a certain level of, yeah, I've tried some stuff. It hasn't always gone extremely well.
totally.
How do you think it is for women today with so many inputs, even people who say, I'm just going to give you the real and the raw, and then they still look amazing. Like, I don't know. It's just so embedded in everything we're looking at, I think. How has it been for you with all these different inputs?
It's too much. It's just too much. And I think it's natural, even I would say in my friend group, I'd look at like, oh, she's really good at this. She's really good at that. And I would admire them, but then that would turn into comparison and become a shame thing. Like, I should also be really good at homeschool. I should also be really good at baking bread. And then you take the big outside perspective of Pinterest, Instagram, and you have all that in your living room as well. And you're not thinking, okay, they might be good at the A, B, and C, but that doesn't mean they're good at these three other things. We can't, nobody, nobody is amazing at everything, period. But it's suffocating, honestly. And I think women are naturally I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, but we're really hard on ourselves, really, really hard on ourselves. And I think when it comes to mothering, it's even more of a trigger issue because there's nothing in the whole world we want to get right more than motherhood. And all we have, and there's no actual pamphlet to tell us how to do it. So we're looking around us to see. And then when we fall short, it's just this deep. I just can remember, especially when my kids were little, just having a super chaotic, crazy day and laying in my bed at night and just being like, "Ah, how many things did I miss? How many things did I get wrong? How could I have been so stressed out or uptight with these precious little people?" But there's so much power I learned in my process. It's when I started saying that out loud. Like, "Hey guys, I'm actually not enjoying every minute of this. It's really hard."
Yeah.
And it was in people other mothers responding like, "Oh, thank God. I thought I was the only one that was feeling this way." There's just so much power in that because it loses its grip on you. It's like, "Oh, that's actually normal. I can still be a really good mom and struggle and be tired and be stressed out and definitely not get every single thing right."
And yet still acknowledge that you love your kids and you're glad to have them. It's not,
Yes.
it's not in the ditch. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that I see, and I even as I was reading over your new book, that I see that is maybe the origin story of perfectionism to some degree, is that we have such fear of being rejected. And so the
Yes.
insurance that we try to buy to hopefully mitigate any kind of rejection that we might experience is if we can just get it perfect. So, talk to me about this other side because we're not always going to get it right. And there are going to be times we don't do it perfectly. And if that fear is that we won't be accepted or we won't be rejected, how do we talk ourselves through? What is the Lamaze class on breathing through? Hey, sometimes you are going to reject it. And why does it feel like I might die if I get rejected? You know?
Right, right. It's the big looming scary thing. It has I don't know if that's like this for everybody, but it definitely has a very to this day, I still have to go through the motions even though I have fear of rejection. It's not like I don't fear being rejected anymore. It's just that I've learned that being authentic and telling the truth is the only way I'm going to make real authentic connections.
To me, perfectionism is one of those things that if we end up in a community where we're all trying so hard to be perfect, and that is the price you pay to cross the bridge into that community,
Mhm.
the stakes only get higher and higher and higher because our lives get more and more and more complicated the further we go into our motherhood journeys, the more things we have to do, all the things. I mean, what it would take to try to uphold all of that scaffolding of perfectionism the deeper we
Yeah.
get into our lives. How on earth?
100%. And I
Yeah.
think too, I don't know, I when I'm in a room where I feel like I have to perform, maybe I've cultivated that. A lot of times that's just my own thing. Like I've been performing, so now I'm kind of stuck in performance. I feel it inside. I don't feel that kind of connection and belonging and letting my hair down that I feel in rooms where I've chosen not to perform.
As we talked about earlier in the conversation, for some of us, we come from a long line of perfectionists. We
Yeah.
learned it the good old fashioned way.
Yes.
and and part of how we learned
Yeah.
it as part of that messaging may be, wow, it's my job to make sure everybody's happy. Again, this kind of ties into that origin story of the fear of rejection when it comes to perfectionism. So, how do we retain a posture where we care? Because Jess, you and I probably have both seen people who are like, "That's it, I'm casting aside perfectionism. I don't care anymore." And then all of a sudden, actually, they're dealing with some psychopathy. Like they're like, "Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of being a sociopath if you really don't care at all what people think."
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So where is the balance about still caring about the people around you, doing your best to try to care about their happiness and yet not completely feel like you have to carry the entirety of that burden? How do you do that?
I think a big one for me is having, an authentic journey with, like, a couple closest friends where I can actually be honest about I forget what happened the other day, but my friend called me out on something, and I was just like, "What piece of work? How do you even deal with me?"
Yeah.
Like, just how annoying. That's so annoying that I did that. I'm like, "What are how do you even hang out with me all the time?" But that I'm not feeling shame. I'm not feeling like I'm the worst person in the world. I'm honestly looking at the fact that I do need to work on this and change this because this is frustrating for the people who are in relationship with me, and that matters to me. So I am gonna work on that. So there's like this combination of being able to look at it, kinda laugh about it, be honest about it, and be like, "What do you think? What do I do?" And then there's also the decision to keep moving forward.
Just how do you evaluate who you're going to let into that space? And the reason I ask is this: we have a lot of people today, and I totally get it. I mean, I've been there where they've ended up in friendships and relationships where someone is demanding all kinds of change in order for them to be accepted in that relationship.
Mm,
But the flip side of that I see happening is people who say, "This is who I am. Take me as who I am. Take it or leave
right.
it." And, there's some sharp edges and some barbs on that kind of approach as
Totally.
well. So, how do we both retain a certain level of saying, "Here I am in my imperfections," while also being willing to receive feedback, to make some adaptations, to do some things that promote growth? I just feel like we're having a hard time in today's culture really hitting the hitting the line on that well.
I completely agree, and I think both extremes can become super unhealthy. Like
Right.
you're missing it. We're meant to be in community with people, So I feel like if we cut ourselves off and we're not listening to any feedback, we're jumping from friend to friend to friend because, oh, they said something that hurt our feelings, we're not gonna
Right.
grow. We're just
Right.
gonna stay at the level that we're at, and we do need to grow and change. A big one for me is that or something that I have learned, 'cause I'm definitely a people pleaser, so I would like everybody to really like me. I would like every single person I ever meet to think I'm kind of the best. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love that. But there's something at the core of it. Do they like me? Do they like me at my core? Do they like not all the extra stuff, but who I am as a person? Because I've been in relationships before where there's so much feedback, and I eventually realized they just don't enjoy me, and that's okay. I rub them wrong. I'm just not their kind of person, and that's okay. But I can't continue to try to win them over. Like, we can maybe be acquaintances, but we shouldn't be close friends. And the same vice versa, honestly. If there's somebody who is, I just don't enjoy who they are as a person at their core, that's not somebody I should be in super close. It seems really obvious,
Mhm.
but for whatever reason, it's not always because whoever I've got in my vision, I'm just kind of tunnel vision. Like, this is the person I'm trying to connect with and get close to, and I want them to love me and like me. So sometimes I can get the tunnel vision on the wrong person.
Right.
At the same time, when I have friends who I know love me at my core and they give me feedback, that's a whole different thing. Because I know they're not trying to change who I am, but they're helping me to grow. And another big one for me is being in my closest relationships with people who are willing to take those masks off and to be honest and authentic back.
I think that's a big one is when you have someone who is very real with you, you can trust, in a sense, more of what they might have to say. It's probably one of the number one questions I get being a mom of 8 kids. And that question is, what on earth are y'all doing about college? And I can tell you, with 8 different kids, 8 different learning styles, 8 different ideas about what the kids want when it comes to their careers and all of the rest, college has been a big topic of conversation around here. Well, there is a university that I want you to know about because it just hits so many of the things that are really important when it comes to considering your kid's college education. George Fox University, it's the #1 private school in Oregon. It's a Christian university. It's located in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. And what's so great is in addition to a top-notch education, students have the opportunity to grow and deepen their faith. And they can learn in this really pivotal time in their lives who God made them to be. I mean, let's face it, we need more people coming out of our universities who know how to be leaders and how to be leaders with character. And George Fox University offers more than 60 academic majors, and that includes a nationally recognized engineering program, a nursing program. It allows your student to pursue their passions and prepare for the calling that God has for them. And let's not forget about fun when it comes to college. George Fox University students have a great student life. There are weekly campus events, there's chapel, there's service opportunities. There are 23 NCAA Division III athletic teams. Here's something that is important to me. There's a study abroad opportunity. So if your student wants to go and experience life somewhere else for a semester, they can do that. There's outdoor recreation because, of course, we're talking about Oregon, so gorgeous. George Fox University could be just the perfect fit for your student as you are looking into college, career, and all that goes beyond. George Fox University, where your student will learn and thrive in the center of it all. I tell you, this is an area where I feel like sometimes in my faith walk, I've gotten things a bit confused because I think sometimes for those of us who are really trying hard to love everybody really well and who
Mhm.
and who
Yeah.
believe that God is love, and we feel like there might not be room for really being honest about who we like being around and who we don't like being around, and we have sometimes can be hard on ourselves thinking, am I being part of a clique? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? How do you manage that piece of it in wanting to be someone who is open and kind to other human beings and yet also maintain enough honesty to say they're just not exactly my people? Like, how do we How do we do that?
My dad is a pastor of this little church in Montana, and he is very, very wise. And I remember him telling me I was working in our church and I was meeting with a lot of people, and I would call it hanging out. I'm hanging out with this person, I'm hanging out with this person. And he's like, I don't think you should call it that because it's different. You're serving that person. I wasn't in like any kind of professional counseling role, but it was more of that mentoring. That's a better word. I was mentoring people. And he's like, you need to be careful what you call it. It's not the same thing. And I think for me, that helped me differentiate. I think serving someone and loving them where they're at is very different than choosing a friend who you're walking with. I would call all those people friends. And I
Right.
think it's super important. And I think I've seen in the past generation a little bit lacking is that no matter what we're doing, no matter how many people we're serving, there's also people in our life that aren't just taking and who are, it's a mutual feet back and forth. And we do honestly, I like them. I want to spend time with them. I'm filled up when I walk away. I think they're just two very different things.
That is powerfully wise. I even see, even outside of faith circles, within, say, a work circle, we talk about our work family, or we
Yeah,
talk about our friends, and they're really our colleagues at work, and we may really enjoy them. There may be a level of friendship that develops,
right.
but wow, there's such wisdom in taking a pause for a minute and really thinking about where do these people really reside categorically, and not that you're minimizing anyone, just understanding their real function in your life and your function in
Yes.
theirs.
And
I
being
mean,
honest with myself where
right,
that relationship is at and having some boundaries because it could be very if you got very needy people in your life who want a lot, and I think oftentimes maybe they want a level of friendship if you are serving them and not really expecting anything in return. Sometimes they can feel like it's more of a friendship than it is necessarily for you, but making sure because it's very important for me to love on people that aren't going to give me anything in return. But I want to save time for those friends who really speak into my life and walk with me and not let all of my time be taken over by those I'm serving, if that makes sense. And that's healthy. I mean, Jesus did that. It's wise, you know.
right. How do you navigate the tension between wanting to be a very authentic person, dropping the perfectionism, being real with people, and finding that there is tremendous community when you do that, and maintaining boundaries? I think that's something that's tough for us today because it feels like sometimes we're either telling it all
Right.
and really,
Totally.
yeah, and you're having
Yep.
that like really awkward situation where I probably didn't need to know that. Okay, but
So
thank you for your vulnerability. You know, all the way to where we do have the masks on. What does that look like for you where you're holding that tension, that space?
I think it was Brene Brown I heard talking about this, that she doesn't talk about she's not open to the public about struggles that she's currently in the middle of, like things that she's wrestling with right now. Those are struggles that she shares with her closest friends. And I think that's similar for me. Anything that I feel is just still in the works and is very vulnerable. Maybe I have some shame wrapped up in it that I'm going to talk to my closest friends. But I do try and just drop the pressure, drop the facade in other ways that aren't so like tender and sensitive with the wider public and with acquaintances, if that makes sense.
Right, right. I think that's an important thing to note because in the work that I did as a women's pastor for several years and in other different communities I've been part of, sometimes I myself, sometimes others have really jumped the gun to some degree on sharing more broadly or sharing details that probably don't necessarily need to be told as part of an
Totally.
authenticity practice, and to
Hmm.
be thoughtful about it. I think the other place too that we need to also be thoughtful with each other is there are places and spaces in which we really need to get a professional involved. It's not our friends'
Absolutely.
jobs, to be the ones to
Yes.
try to figure this out for us. How do you navigate that space where, you have someone maybe who's part of the community and you're recognizing, wow, this is a great place to be truthful about what's going on in our lives, but this might be a place, an opportunity for someone really to move into a more guided path toward healing. How do you navigate that? Because you operate such a large online community in that space.
Yeah, I think Amy and I talk about that often. Like our friends, we're not professional. I mean, unless you're really lucky, I guess. But even in that regard, that could get weird if you're
Yeah.
having your friend as your actual therapist. I mean, I go to regular therapy. I think recognizing my own limitations in my close friends' lives. I'm the listener. I'm the sounding board. I'm the supporter. I'll give some feedback, but knowing I'm not a professional is really important, and pointing people to that.
Right,
Sorry.
right. No, and I think too that the self-evaluation, that if you are someone who wants to begin a greater practice of being vulnerable and transparent with people, to really think through A, who you're really wanting to share with, B, what level of detail is really necessary, particularly if there's another party involved, if you're talking about your marriage, if you're talking about parenting, if you're talking about a relationship with your parent, whatever that is, and what could potentially get back to that person, how important
Oh,
it is
yeah.
to hold those things in confidentiality, and to really think about what you're trying to get out of this. If it's a place where you're sharing because it brings people closer together and it really lifts everyone up, that's one thing. If you're really thinking that it's somebody else needs to carry the burden, or you want somebody to feel
Right.
sorry for you,
To save you, feel sorry
right,
for you. Yes.
exactly. That becomes a different means of using some of the experiences, the challenges, the places of vulnerability in our lives. How do you just take a look at maintaining a community that is positive and upbeat, not in a cheesy, fake way, but not allowing a community where there is a lot of sharing going on to get super depressing? I mean, I don't mean
I
that in a
mean,
mean
that's
way,
very
but
easy. No, it can get super depressing really easy. Do you mean in the online community world or
I
like
would say
real
both
world?
online and in real world, because I've seen it happen in both places, where with all the best intention to be a safe space for people, whether that's in an online community, that's in a small group, that's in a Bible study, that's in a book club, that the
Right.
intention is there to be a safe space. And all of a sudden it takes this turn to where everybody's just sitting and licking their wounds all the time. And it can really get mired, in some dark
Right.
stuff. So,
It gets really tricky and it can
right.
bog everybody down. I think boundaries are just so important. I think for all of us recognizing, like you're saying, who has the capacity to hold this and who doesn't. And it's probably not, unless you're talking about something specific as a group, it's probably not a whole big group has the capacity to hold something that you're really struggling through. That's probably not the place to bring it. Maybe to one friend or two friends. Amy and I, when we were dealing with COVID and things were just hard on a lot of different fronts, we would often ask each other, "What's your capacity today?"
Mm,
Because
yeah.
we're long distance, so I'm not in her day to day necessarily. But how much can you handle? And I think that that's a good for our closest friends. That can be a good question to ask. I've realized too, I can be honest and real without spilling my stuff out
Such
all
an
over the
important
floor.
distinction. Yeah.
I can for example, if I'm hosting something, my natural bent is to just be like, "Hi, so glad you're here. Yay." Which is fun. That's good. But I can also, in that same bit, if somebody asks me, "How are you?" I'm like, "Honestly, it's been a little bit stressful today. I have a headache. I don't know." I can be honest in that vein, and for some reason, that's very, very freeing. Like, I've been really grumpy all day. I feel fine now, but it's been a weird day. Like, you can say stuff like that without being like, "I had a fight with my husband. This is the fight. This is what I'm dealing with. This is really horrible and hard." You can have authenticity without bleh, puking
Right.
it all and expecting someone to know how to deal with it.
Right, right. I think that's a really important place to pause and take a minute when you're getting ready to share, is to say, am I creating deeper connection? Am I dropping a mask so that we understand each other? Or am I actually trying to offload my stress onto the next person? Am I actually just taking the baby spit up and putting it on their lapel and like, now you get to deal with it? So
Totally, yes.
now within this title, Perfect is Boring and It Tastes Like Kale, Tell me about the upside of imperfectionism, if you will. What makes it not boring when we are more real with each other?
Gosh, because we're all just so different. Like what I picture is sitting at a table with a bunch of beautiful women with all their different strengths and different weaknesses and sharing food and laughing together and just embracing who we are. Like, I think I want to always be growing. I think we're always growing, but I am never, ever going to be someone I'm not. And so accepting the fact that there's some things that are always going to be a little bit of a struggle for me feels like a huge relief. I think when we come together over our imperfection, it's like a celebration almost. It's not just even an acceptance, but it's a celebration, not of like you were saying, not of I'm never going to change or work on myself, not like that, but I'm being okay that we have weaknesses. We're always going to have weaknesses. We're never ever going to arrive in a place where we don't have weaknesses, and it's okay. And when we talk about it, it's so freeing.
That's a really beautiful note about battling perfectionism, is that place of saying, this has been a challenge for me. It will continue to be a challenge, but maybe I won't be quite so out of breath.
Yeah,
As I'm,
totally. Yeah.
maybe there's just, I'm building some endurance for this thing that's always a little bit of a thorn in my side. And it's not about necessarily trying to eliminate, and that growth doesn't mean I'm ever going to eliminate this. It simply
Yeah.
means that I'm going to develop even more grace around it, more honesty around it, and some progress. And some progress
Mhm.
is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to completely see this thing exit my life. So
Right.
I love
And
that
I think
idea.
that's what we expect of ourselves. Like there's
Yeah.
this level
Oh,
of
yeah.
shame. Like I have this thought all the time. I can't believe I'm here again. I
Yeah.
can't believe like simple things like fear of rejection, like we're talking about.
Right.
Struggling with fear about whatever because I'm afraid of rejection. I can't believe I'm here again. I can't believe I still wrestle with this. I can't believe it. Believe it. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
super, super normal to keep coming back to the same things. And each time you are getting stronger and you are learning and you are having breakthrough. But it's completely okay to continue to wrestle through things. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. I think that's something we often think is just us with whatever it is, whether it's like keeping our house clean or it's managing our schedules or being on time or whatever it is. I think we often think because we see people who are naturally good at it or whatever, they're on top of it. We often think I should get there. This shouldn't
Right.
continue to be a struggle. And because of that, we feel like there's something wrong with this. We feel like the shame, and there's not. I probably will have a little bit of fear of rejection the rest of my life.
And it's not making an excuse to say this is something
No,
that I know that I battle. Um,
no.
and
It
to
makes you
and
want
to
to
not
hit it
think
head on.
right, right. And I think sometimes we think other people are making excuses when they're clear about the places that are challenges for them. But what if there is a space where we can be really clear about what's a challenge for us, and we're not making excuses? We're
Yeah,
just growing. That's all.
totally.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that's
love it.
part of it, right? We have to
Yeah,
do it scared. We have to do it when we're struggling with it. That's
yeah.
that's part of it.
It's part of the honesty. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, Jess, I'm so excited for you on this new book. You just have
Thank
added
you so
so much.
much.
Oh, absolutely. You've added so much color and life to so many people in the beautiful community that you've built. The book is called Perfect is Boring and Tastes Like Kale. So tell the listener where they can go to find it, where they can go to interact with you, to find all the great stuff you and Amy have done, all the things.
Okay, we are mainly on Facebook at Sister I'm With You, Amy and I. And then also I'm on Facebook at Jess Johnston and then also on Instagram. And you can find my new book everywhere books are sold for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those places. So
Awesome. All righty, listener, you know where to go to find all the great stuff with Jess. Jess, thanks again so much for your time. Such a delightful conversation. Really appreciate you.
oh, thank you.
All right, listener, go to the show notes. Rebecca puts those together each and every week, and you'll find all the great stuff, the links, all the things that Jess was talking about, including where you can find the book. I love to interact with you too. Julie Lyles Carr, all the places. Instagram mainly. Come over to and just send me a DM. I want to hear your questions, want to hear your feedback on this interview. Also, grab the link from this interview and send it to a friend who you want to develop a more authentic, real friendship with, and let them take a listen. I think there's so many great points that Jess had along the way about how to do that. And I will talk to you next time here on the AllMomDoes podcast.